Welcome to Stanley Community College's Rhetorical Mode series. My name is John Bowman, and I'll be talking to you today about the mode definition. Definition may seem like it's a straightforward word. I mean, why not just go to the dictionary and look up a word after all? If I need the definition of a complicated idea like evolution, I can just go to Webster's dictionary and pull that out, and right there it is. However, I want to give you an example today that is going to show you how complicated definition writing actually is. Let's talk about a boy-girl fight. So you have a boy and you have a girl, and one evening the boy says to the girl, "I'll be home later," and then he leaves the house. She says, "Oh, well, okay, later means something like 9 p.m. or 10 p.m. and he comes back at 3 a.m. the next morning. Is that later? Well, according to the textbook definition of later, if we looked it up in something like Webster's, it would indeed be the definition of later. Later is any time after the present. So the boy's not wrong, but he is. Because later is inside of a certain context at a given moment, and because it's in that context, she can reasonably assume that later in that context is going to mean something like 9 p.m. or 10 p.m. because any later than that would be rude. So that illustrates why definition is a very complicated thing. It's not so simple as, let me just pull up this particular authority and look up this definition and offer it to you. There are other things that come along with words. So for example, we might look at any given word's denotation and connotation. The denotation is exactly what I talked about just a second ago. I open the dictionary and there's my textbook definition right there. But the connotation of the other associations that come along with any given word. So for example, in the boy-girl fight that I just mentioned a moment ago, the connotations of later would mean a reasonable time period and all the other stuff that I just said a moment ago. She's within her rights to think that later is going to mean something like 9 p.m. or 10 p.m. because they've been in a relationship for a long time, and generally speaking, that's what it means. He's not technically wrong to say 3 a.m., but the connotation of the word that he's chosen does mean he's very much wrong. So, denotation and connotation are both living parts of any given language. I also want to talk about how language creates reality. We really see no distinction between something like principled and stubborn. That's why I picked this picture of a cat on a leash. Is that cat principled or is that cat stubborn? We might also consider the distinction between something like an office coordinator and a secretary. Which one do you want to be? An office coordinator sounds much more fancy on a business card, however, it's not really that distinct from a secretary. We might also look at the distinction between a terrorist and a freedom fighter. Now that's a challenging definition, and most people would say, oh, there's a clear distinction between the two, but quite frankly, it depends on who you're asking. If you're asking the people who are considered terrorists, they think of themselves as freedom fighters, and vice versa. Why do we need to define in a college paper? And it's because we have very complicated ideas at the college level, and we need to make sure that we set out a clear precedent for exactly what that means. The illustration that I've chosen to use is evolution. I think that evolution is a very, very complicated term, and if you're in a biology class, it has several different associations that come along with it. So we might look at something like basic Darwinian evolution. Basic Darwinian evolution is survival of the fittest and natural selection and all the traditional processes that we might look at. However, that's in contrast to something like Lamarckian evolution. Lamarckian evolution has subsequently been proven wrong, but if you're going to write a paper about evolution and it's going to be an exhaustive paper, that's a very distinctive idea from Darwinian evolution. We might also look at something like epigenetic evolution, which is survival of the fittest with, yes, natural selection, but it basically treats genes as taking an educated guess about what's best to happen at any given moment. And that is in contrast to Darwinian evolution, which says that genes just take random guesses and random mutations happen. We might also contrast all of those with something like intelligent design. Intelligent design argues that there is a guiding process inside the entire evolutionary process itself, and that's how evolution takes place. So, again, evolution is a very complicated idea, and when we start talking about it, we need to pin down exactly what we mean so that our audience knows what we mean. Or practically speaking, by the way, your biology instructor also wants to know that you know and understand the definition of evolution, so that's why you need to provide an effective definition. I'll give you one final example before I wrap up, and I'm going to leave the methodology to our written version inside of the English materials themselves. That final example is the definition of art. So we might look at an artist like Banksy. Banksy likes to paint his paintings on the side of buildings. I mean real buildings. Like if you were at Stanley Community College and Banksy came by, he would paint it on the side of Snyder. Is that art or is that graffiti? It depends again on who you're asking. If you're asking Banksy, Banksy says that that is very much art. But if you're asking the people who have to wash it off, they're going to say that that's graffiti. Again, that's why I want to pin it down. Art is not just one thing, it's several different things, just like the definition I gave of evolution a moment ago. That is the summary. That shows you why definition is so important. And it should get you started on the processes and the methodologies, again, that we have written out inside of English 111. This is just a guiding overall principle, and this is just to give you some background information to show you why it's not just acceptable to go to the dictionary. If you have any questions about what I've covered in this video, feel free to contact me or your instructor, and we'll be happy to talk about it.